Signing waivers, I'll be signing autographs, sitting on a camelback, waiting for the motor, floating upstream, where everyone will join her. Keep the same persona, keep it all in order, drinking a Corona, heading for the border, walking through a mission, feeling like a kid again, needing my position, saying, where have you been? Because everything's black and white when there's only colors. Talking about Meredith, I don't even know why. Waiting such a long time just to plainly say that we are in the back of line, living on the street. I follow you to Nazareth to figure out a poem. Talk about Jesus, I don't even know him. We can make it happen, maybe in a train. Yeah, I'm calling out the captain, saying, where have you been? Where have you been? Where have you been? Just to start off the day, down Roscoe Street to the 86 A. Get off at the barber shop on Penny Lane. Move up a small hill and follow the plane. Right on, going by the shoreline, just stop ahead. To the left is a National Trust, but there's no need to say. John Lennon pops away while I'm staring at his birthplace. Saying, where have you been? 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 Hello, welcome to story time. And he said StreamYard is trash audio. Does it sound bad coming through? I guess I should get better at like listening to my streams to see if they sound terrible. But I don't know, it sounds good on my end. So anyway, hello to everyone. Thank you all for being here. So I see Jenny T.I. Murphy and pyridoxine oxide, Kirk, and Jess Palmer, David Rife. Hello to everyone. Anyway, we're back with I'm back with another week of story time. I'm reading the Chronicles of Narnia, and we're on the final book, which is The Last Battle. And
I'm like super wiped out right now because I went to a new class at the gym and it was freaking insane. It was so intense and awesome. It was like cardio and strength and weights, and it was beyond crazy. Hello, waters above. I love you. Adorable side ponytail. Thank you very much. Yeah, I was feeling the just this. So, um, yeah, my workout was like crazy. It was so intense and just very very awesome. So I feel great, but I'm also like super wiped out. Because I also worked before that, and yeah, it's been a good day, but yeah, thank you all for being here, and I'm going to be reading chapter 3 and chapter 4 of the last battle. Awesome. Yeah, sleep good, waters above, and yeah, she's reading the Celestine Prophecy tomorrow on her channel. So, um, yeah, I don't think there's anything else, so we can just get right at it. We are on chapter 3, The Ape in Its Glory. Master Horse, said Tyrion as he hastily cut its traces. How came these aliens to enslave you? Is Narnia conquered? Has there been a battle? No, sire, panted the horse. Aslan is here. It is all by his orders. He has commanded. "Where danger, king," said Jewel. Tyrion looked up and saw that the Calormenes, mixed with a few talking beasts, were beginning to run toward them from every direction. The two dead men had died without a cry, and so it had taken a moment before the rest of the crowd knew what had happened. But now they did. Most of them had naked scimitars in their hands. "Quick, on my back," said Jewel. The king flung himself astride of his old friend, who turned and galloped away. He changed direction twice or thrice as soon as they were out of sight of their enemies. Crossed a stream and shouted without slackening his pace, "Whither? Whither away, sire? To Cair Paravel?" There was a nice picture there for you. Hello, Sufanelli. "Hold hard, friend," said Tyrion. "Let me off." He slid off the unicorn's back and faced him. "Jewel," said the king, "we have done a dreadful deed." "We were sorely provoked," said Jewel. "But to leap on them unawares, without defying them while they were unarmed, faugh, we are two murderers, Jewel. I am dishonored forever." Jewel drooped his head. He too was ashamed. "And then," said the king, "the horse said it was by Aslan's orders." Thought I was going to sneeze. The rat said the same. "They all say Aslan is here. How if it were true? But, sire, how could Aslan be commanding such dreadful things?" "He is not a tame lion," said Tyrion. "How should we know what he would do? We who are murderers, Jewel, I will go back, I will give up my sword and put myself in the hands of these Calormenes and ask that they bring me before Aslan. Let him do justice on me." "You will go to your death then," said Jewel. Do you think I care if Aslan dooms me to death? Said the king. That would be nothing, nothing at all. Would it not be better to be dead than to have this horrible fear that Aslan has come and is not like the Aslan we have believed in and longed for? It is as if the sun rose one day and were a black sun. Ariel Truth Seeker, hello. I know, said Jewel, or as if you drank water and it were dry water. You are in the right, sire. This is the end of all things. Let us go and give ourselves up. There is no need for both of us to go. If ever we loved one another, let me go with you now, said the unicorn. If you are dead, and if Aslan is not Aslan, what life is left for me? They turned and walked back together, shedding bitter tears. As soon as they came to the place on, where the work was going on, the Calormenes raised a cry and came toward them with the weapons in hand. But the king held out his sword with the hilt toward them and said, I, who was king of Narnia and am now a dishonored knight, give myself up to the justice of Aslan. Bring me before him. And I give myself up too, said Jewel. Then the dark men came round them in a thick crowd, smelling of garlic and onions, their white eyes flashing dreadfully in their brown faces. They put a rope halter round Jewel's neck. They took the king's sword away and tied his hands behind his back. One of the Calormenes, who had a helmet instead of a turban and seemed to be in command, snatched the gold circlet off Tyrion's head and hastily put it away somewhere along his clothes. They led the two prisoners uphill to a place where there was a big clearing, and this was what the prisoners saw. Barbara Bear, hello. At the center of the clearing, which was also the highest point of the hill, there was a little hut like a stable with a thatched roof. Its door was shut. On the grass in front of the door there sat an ape. Tyrion and Jewel, who had been expecting to see Aslan and had heard nothing about an ape yet, were very bewildered when they saw it. The ape was, of course, Shift himself, but he looked 10 times uglier than when he lived by Cauldron Pool, for he was now dressed up. He was wearing a scarlet jacket which did not fit him very well, having been made for a dwarf. He had jeweled slippers on his hind paws, which would not stay on properly because, the hind paws of an ape are really like hands. He wore what seemed to be a paper crown on his head. There was a great pile of nuts beside him, and he kept cracking nuts with his jaws and spitting out the shells. And he also kept on pulling up the scarlet jacket to scratch himself. A great number of talking beasts stood facing him, and nearly every face in that crowd looked miserably worried and bewildered. When they saw who the prisoners were, they all groaned and whimpered. Oh, Lord Shift, mouthpiece of Aslan, said the chief Calormene, we bring you prisoners. By our skill and courage, and by the permission of the great god Tash, we have taken alive these two desperate murderers. Give me that man's sword, said the ape. So they took the king's sword and handed it with the sword belt and all to the monkey, and he hung it round his own neck, and it made him look sillier than ever. We'll see about those two later, said the ape, spitting out a shell in the direction of the two prisoners. I got some other business first. They can wait. Now, listen to me, everyone. The first thing I want to say is about nuts. Where's that head squirrel got to? Here, sir, said a red squirrel, coming forward to make a nervous little bow. Oh, you are you? Said the ape with a nasty look. Now attend to me. I want Aslan wants some more nuts. These you've brought aren't anything like enough. You must bring some more. Do you hear? Twice as many, and they've got to be here by sunset tomorrow. And there mustn't be any bad ones or any small ones among them. A murmur of dismay ran through the other squirrels, and the head squirrel plucked up courage to say, "Please, would Aslan himself speak to us about it, if we might be allowed to see him?" "Well, you won't," said the ape. "He may be very kind, though it's a lot more than most of you deserve, and come out for a few minutes tonight. Then you can all have a look at him, but he will not have you all crowding round him and pestering him with questions." Pepe the Penguin, hello. You are first, correct? Anything you want to say to him will be passed on through me, if I think it's worth bothering him about. In the meantime, all you squirrels had better go and see about the nuts, and make sure they are here by tomorrow evening, or my word you'll catch it. The poor squirrels all scampered away as if a dog were after them. This new order was terrible news for them. The nuts they had carefully hoarded for the winter had nearly all been eaten by now, and of the few that were left, they had already given the ape far more than they could spare. Then a deep voice, it belonged to a great tusked and shaggy boar, spoke from another part of the crowd. "But why can't we see Aslan properly and talk to him?" it said. "When he used to appear in Narnia in the old days, everyone could talk to him face to face." "Don't you believe it," said the ape, "and even if it was true, times have changed. Aslan says he's been far too soft with you before. Do you see? Well, he isn't going to be soft anymore. He's going to lick you into shape this time. He'll teach you to think he's a tame lion." A low moaning and whimpering was heard among the beasts, and after that a dead silence, which was more miserable still. Melanie Moran, hello. "And now there's another thing you got to learn," said the ape. "I hear some of you are saying I'm an ape. Well, I'm not. I'm a man. If I look like an ape, that's because I'm so very old. Hundreds and hundreds of years old. And it's because I'm so old that I'm so wise. And it's because I'm so wise that I'm the only one Aslan is ever going to speak to. He can't be bothered talking to a lot of stupid animals. He'll tell me what you've got to do, and I'll tell the rest of you. And take my advice and see you do it double quick, for he doesn't mean to stand any nonsense." You hear that, guys? No nonsense, okay? Keep it in line. Zero nonsense up in here. There was dead silence except for the noise of a very young badger crying and its mother trying to make it keep quiet. "And here's another thing," the ape went on, fitting a fresh nut into its cheek. "I hear some of the horses are saying, 'Let's hurry up and get this job of carting timber over as quickly as we can, and then we'll be free again.' Well, you can get that idea out of your heads at once." And not only the horses either. Everybody who can work is going to be made to work in future. Aslan has it all settled with the king of Calormen, the Tisroc, as our dark-faced friends the Calormenes call him. You and all you horses and bulls and donkeys are to be sent down into Kellerman to work for your living, pulling and carrying the way horses and such like do in other countries. And all you digging animals like moles and rabbits and dwarfs are going down to work in the Tisrock's mines. And "No, no, no," howled the beast. "It can't be true. Aslan would never sell us into slavery to the king of Calormen." Hello, Wanderer of the Zone. Give that dude a banana Kit Kat. Hee hee. That ape is full of doo doo. Yeah, he is. He's quite the piece of work. Um, I'm saying him, he's a human, kind of reminds me of Animal Farm when the pigs were like becoming more human and they were just super gross. And yeah, I forgot what this book was about, but it's coming back a little bit as I'm rereading it. Yeah, it's a good one. None of that. Hold your noise, said the ape with a snarl. Who said anything about slavery? You won't be slaves. You'll be paid very good wages, too. That is to say, your pay will be paid into Aslan's treasury, and he will use it all for everybody's good. Then he glanced and almost winked at the chief Calormene. The Calormene bowed and replied in the pompous Calormene way, most sapient mouthpiece of Aslan, the Tisroc, may he live forever, is wholly of one mind with your lordship in this judicious plan. There you see, said the ape, it's all arranged and all for your own good. Will be able, with the money you earn, to make Narnia a country worth living in. There will be oranges and bananas pouring in, and roads and big cities, and schools and offices, and whips and muzzles and saddles, and cages, and kennels and prisons. Oh, everything. The ape is ape shit crazy. Yes, indeed he is. Yeah, he's quite the dictator, or just I don't know. But we don't want all those things, said an old bear. We want to be free, and we want to hear Aslan speak himself. Now, don't you start arguing, said the ape, for it's a thing I won't stand. I'm a man. You're only a fat, stupid old bear. What do you know about freedom? You think freedom means doing what you like? Well, you're wrong. That isn't true freedom. True freedom means doing what I tell you. Hmm, grunted the bear and scratched its head. It found this sort of thing hard to understand. Please, please, said the high voice of a woolly lamb who was so young that everyone was surprised he dared to speak at all. Shiv thinks that he's the Pope. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. What is it now? Said the ape. Be quick. Please, said the lamb, I can't understand. What have we to do with the Calormenes? We belong to Aslan. They belong to Tash. They have a god called Tash. They say he has four arms and the head of a vulture. They kill men on his altar. I don't believe there's any such person as Tash, but if there was, how could Aslan be friends with him? That's exactly what I thought. What's crazier, ape shit or bat shit? Ape, but way more yuck to pluck up. Yeah, that's that's exactly what I was thinking. That's funny. All the animals cocked their heads sideways, and all their bright eyes flashed toward the ape. They knew it was the best question anyone had asked yet. The ape jumped up and spat at the lamb. Baby, he hissed, a silly little bleater. Go home to your mother and drink milk. What do you understand of such things? But the others, listen, Tosh is only another name for Aslan. All that old idea of us being right and the Calormenes wrong is silly. We know better now. The Calormenes used different words, but we all mean the same thing. Tash and Aslan are only two different names for you know who. That's why there can never be any quarrel between them. Get that into your heads, you stupid brutes. Tosh is Aslan, Aslan is Tosh. It's funny that they said, uh, two different names for you know who, because in Harry Potter, you know who is Voldemort, and so that was a just interesting phrasing. Yeah, apes get crazy. They'll rip your face right off. Like they're wild. Yeah, super wild. I think ape shit crazy is temporary, bat shit is long term. Boy, these are great ideas. Yeah. You know how sad your own dog's face can look sometimes. Think of that, and then think of all the faces of those talking beasts, all those honest, humble, bewildered birds, bears, badgers, rabbits, moles, and mice, all far sadder than that. Every tail was down, every whisker drooped. It would have broken your heart with very pity to see their faces. There was only one who did not look at all unhappy. It was a ginger cat, a great big Tom in the prime of life, who sat bolt upright with his tail curled round his toes in the very front row of all the beasts. He had been staring hard at the ape and the Calormene captain all the time and had never once blinked his eyes. Excuse me, said the cat very politely, but this interests me. Does your friend from Calormen say the same? Assuredly, said the Calormene. The enlightened ape, man, I mean, is in the right. Aslan means neither less nor more than Tosh. Especially Aslan means no more than Tosh, suggested the cat. No more at all, said the Calormene, looking the cat straight in the face. Is that good enough for you, Ginger? Said the ape. Oh, certainly, said Ginger coolly. Thank you very much. I only wanted to be quite clear. I think I am beginning to understand. Up till now, the king and Jewel had said nothing. They were waiting until the ape should bid them speak, for they thought it was no use interrupting. But now, as Tyrion looked round on the miserable faces of the Narnians and saw how they would all believe that Aslan and Tash were one and the same, he could bear it no longer. Ape, he cried with a great voice, you lie damnably. You lie like a Calormene. You lie like an ape. He meant to go on and ask how the terrible god Tash, who fed on the blood of his people, could possibly be the same as the good lion by whose blood all Narnia was saved. If he had been allowed to speak, the rule of the ape might have been ended that day. The beast might have seen the truth and thrown the ape down, but before he could say another word, two Calormenes struck him on the mouth with all their force, and a third, from behind, kicked his feet from under him, and as he fell, the ape squealed in rage and terror. Take him away! Take him away! Take him where he cannot hear us, nor we hear him. There, tie him to a tree. Aslan will do justice on him later. Chapter 4. What happened that night? What happened indeed? All right, y'all having fun? I'm having a great time. I thank you all for being here. It's always a pleasure. So, maybe. Some people, some people probably like batshit crazy. You're always gonna have a crazy story from those people. But anyway, chapter 4. What happened that night? The king was so dizzy from being knocked down that he hardly knew what was happening until the Calormenes untied his wrists and put his arms straight down by his sides and set him with his back against an ash tree. Then they bound ropes around his ankles and his knees and his waist and his chest and left him there. What worried him worst at the moment, for it is often little things that are hardest to stand, was that his lip was bleeding where they had hit him, and he couldn't wipe the little trickle of blood away, although it tickled him. From where he was, he could still see the little stable on top of the hill and the ape sitting in front of it. He could just hear the ape's voice still going on, and every now and then some answer from the crowd, but he could not make out the words. Gigi, Abby Lynn, love listening to this. Thanks. You're most welcome. Thanks so much for being here. Do my thesis on the difference between ape and bat shit crazy. Well, I look forward to reading that, Kirk. Read it on the live stream just for you. I'm sure it'll be epic. I wonder what they've done to Jewel, thought the king. Presently, the crowd of beasts broke up and began going away in different directions. Some passed close to Tyrion. They looked at him as if they were both frightened and sorry to see him tied up, but none of them spoke. Soon they had gone, and there was silence in the wood. Then hours and hours went past, and Tyrion became first very thirsty and then very hungry, and as the afternoon dragged on and turned into evening, he became cold too. His back was very sore, the sun went down, and it began to be twilight. When it was almost dark, Tyrion heard a light pitter-patter of feet and saw some small creatures coming toward him. The three on the left were mice, and there was a rabbit in the middle on the right, and on the right were two moles. Both these were carrying little bags on their backs, which gave them a curious look in the dark, so that at first he wondered what kind of beasts they were. Then, in a moment, they were all standing up on their hind legs, laying their cool paws on his knees, and giving his knees snuffly animal kisses. They could reach they could reach his knees because Narnian talking beasts of that sort are bigger than the dumb beasts of the same kind in England. Lord King, dear Lord King, said their shrill voices, we are so sorry for you. We daren't untie you because Aslan might be angry with us, but we've brought you your supper. At once the first mouse climbed nimbly up till he was perched on the rope that bound Tyrion's chest and was wrinkling his blunt nose in front of Tyrion's face. Then the second mouse climbed up and hung on just below the first mouse. The other beast stood on the ground and began handing things up. Drink, sire, and then you'll find you are able to eat, said the topmost mouse, and Tyrion found that a little wooden cup was being held to his lips. It was only the size of an egg cup, so that he had hardly tasted the wine in it before it was empty. But then the mouse passed it down, and the others refilled it, and it was passed up again. And Tyrion emptied it a second time. In this way they went on till he had quite a good drink, which was all the better for coming in little doses, for that is more thirst-quenching than one long draught. Here is cheese, sire, said the first mouse, but not very much for fear it would make you too thirsty. And after the cheese, they fed him with some oat cakes and fresh butter, and then with some more wine. Sounds like a good meal. I want some of that. Now hand up the water, said the first mouse, and I'll wash the king's face. There is blood on it. Then Tyrion felt something like a tiny sponge dabbing his face, and it was most refreshing. Little friend, said Tyrion, how can I thank you for all this? You needn't, said the little voices. What else could we do? We don't want any other king. We're your people. If it was only the ape and the Calormenes who were against you, we would have fought till we were cut into pieces before we'd have let them tie you up. We would indeed, but we can't go against Aslan. Do you think it really is Aslan? Asked the king. Oh, yes, yes, said the rabbit. He came out of the stable last night. We all saw him. What was he like? Said the king. Like a terrible great lion. To be sure, said one of the mice. And you think it is really Aslan who is killing the wood nymphs and making you all slaves to the king of Calormen? Yeah, I like a good draft beer. That's about, yeah. If I have like a bottled beer or whatever, I like the apple ales, but with a draft, I'm more willing to try different things. Um, let's see. Ah, that's bad, isn't it? Said the second mouse. It would have been better if we'd died before all this began. But there's no doubt about it. Everyone says it's Aslan's orders, and we've seen him. We didn't think Aslan would be like that, but why we we wanted him to come back to Narnia. He seems to have come back very angry this time, said the first mouse. We must all have done something dreadfully wrong without knowing it. He must be punishing us for something, but I do think we might be told what it was. I suppose what we're doing now may be wrong, said the rabbit. I don't care if it is, said one of the moles. I'd do it again. But the others said, Oh, hush, and do be careful. And then they all said, We're sorry, dear king, but we must go back now. It would never do for us to be caught here. Leave me at once, dear beast, said Tyrion. I would not for all Narnia bring any of you into danger. Good night, said the beasts, rubbing their noses against his knees. We will come back if we can. Then they all pattered away, and the wood seemed darker and colder and lonelier than it had been before they came. The stars came out, and time went slowly on. Imagine how slowly, while the last king of Narnia stood stiff and sore and upright against the tree in his bonds. But at last something happened. Far away there appeared a red light. Then it disappeared for a moment and came back again, bigger and stronger. Then he could see dark shapes going to and fro on this side of the light and carrying bundles and throwing them down. He knew now what he was looking at. It was a bonfire newly lit, and people were throwing bundles of brushwood onto it. Presently it blazed up, and Tyrion could see that it was on the very top of the hill. He could see quite clearly the stable behind it, all lit up in the red glow, and a great crowd of beasts and men between the fire and himself. A small figure hunched up beside the fire must be the ape. It was saying something to the crowd, but he could not hear what. Then it went and bowed 3 times to the ground in front of the door of the stable. Then he got up and opened the door, and something on 4 legs, something that walked rather stiffly, came out of the stable and stood facing the crowd. A great wailing or howling went up, so loud that Tyrion could hear some of the words. Aslan, 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 cried the beast. Speak to us, comfort us, be angry with us no more. From where Tyrion was, he could not make out very clearly what the thing was, but he could see that it was yellow and hairy, and he had never seen the great lion. He had never seen a common lion. He couldn't be sure that what he saw was not the real Aslan. He had not expected Aslan to look like that stiff thing which stood and said nothing. But how could one be sure? For a moment, horrible thoughts went through his mind. Then he remembered the nonsense about Tosh and Aslan being the same, and knew that the whole thing must be a cheat. The ape put his hand put his head close up to the yellow thing's head as if it were listening to something it was whispering to him. Then he turned and spoke to the crowd, and the crowd wailed again. Then the yellow thing turned clumsily around and walked, you might almost say waddled, back into the stable, and the ape shut the door behind it. After that, the fire must have been put out, for the light vanished quite suddenly, and Tyrion was once more alone with the cold and the darkness. He thought of other kings who had lived and died in Narnia in old times, and it seemed to him that none of them had ever been so unlucky as himself. He thought of his great grandfather's great grandfather, King Rilian, who had been stolen away by a witch when he was only a young prince and kept hidden for years in the dark caves beneath the land of the northern giants. But then it had all come right in the end, for two mysterious children had suddenly appeared from the land beyond the world's end and had rescued him, so that he came home to Narnia and had a long and prosperous reign. It's not like that with me, said Tyrion to himself. Then he went further back and thought about Rilian's father, Caspian the seafarer, whose wicked uncle King Miraz had tried to murder him, and how Caspian fled away into the woods and lived among the dwarfs. But that story, too, had all come right in the end. For Caspian had been helped by children, only there were four of them that time, who came from somewhere beyond the world and fought a great battle and set him on his father's throne. But it was all long ago, said Tyrion to himself. That sort of thing doesn't happen now. And then he remembered, for he had always been good at history when he was a boy, how those same four children who had helped Caspian had been in Narnia over 1,000 years before, and it was then that they had done the most remarkable thing of all. For they had defeated the terrible White Witch and ended the 100 years of winter. And after that, they had reigned, all four of them together, at Cair Paravel, till they were no longer children, but great kings and lovely queens. And their reign had been the golden age of Narnia, and Aslan had come into that story a lot. He had come into all the other stories too, as Tyrion now remembered. Aslan and children from another world, thought Tyrion. They've always come in when things were at their worst. Oh, if only they could now. And he called out, Aslan, 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 come and help us now. But the darkness and the cold and the quietness went on just the same. Let me be killed, cried the king. I ask nothing for myself, but come and save all Narnia. And still there was no change in the night or the wood, but there began to be a kind of change inside Tyrion. Without knowing why, he began to feel a faint hope, and he felt somehow stronger. Oh, Aslan, Aslan, he whispered, if you will not come yourself, at least send me the helpers from beyond the world, or let me call them, let my voice carry beyond the world. Then hardly knowing what Then, hardly knowing that he was doing it, he suddenly cried out in a great voice, Children, children, friends of Narnia, quick, come to me. Across the world I call you. I, Tyrion, King of Narnia, Lord of Cair Paravel, and Emperor of the Lone Islands. Hello, Eric DeLeon. Welcome. And immediately he was plunged into a dream, if it was a dream, more vivid than any he had had in his life. He seemed to be standing in a lighted room where 7 people sat round a table. It looked as if they had just finished their meal. 2 of those people were very old, an old man with a white beard and an old woman with wise, merry, twinkling eyes. He who sat at the right hand of the old man was hardly full grown, certainly younger than Tyrion himself, but his face had already the look of a king and a warrior. And you could almost say the same of the other youth who sat at the right hand of the old woman. Facing Tyrion across the table sat a fair-haired girl younger than either of these, and on either side of her, a boy and a girl who were younger still. They were all dressed in what seemed to Tyrion the oddest kind of clothes. But he had no time to think about details like that, for instantly the youngest boy and both the girls started to their feet, and one of them gave a little scream. The old woman started and drew in her breath sharply. The old man must have made some sudden movement too, for the wine glass which stood at his right hand was swept off the table. Tyrion could hear the tinkling noise as it broke on the floor. Thank you very much, Eric. Then Tyrion realized that these people could see him. They were staring at him as if they saw a ghost. But he noticed that the king-like one who sat at the old man's right never moved, though he turned pale, except that he clenched his hand very tight. Then he said, "Speak, if you're not a phantom or a dream. You have a Narnian look about you, and we're the 7 friends of Narnia." Tyrion was longing to speak, and he tried to cry out aloud that he was Tyrion of Narnia, in great need of help. But he found, as I have sometimes found in dreams too, that his voice made no sense at all. The one who had already spoken to him rose to his feet. "Shadow or spirit, or whatever you are," he said, fixing his eyes full upon Tyrion, "if you are from Narnia, I charge you, in the name of Aslan, speak to me. I am Peter, the High King." The room began to swim before Tyrion's eyes. He heard the voices of the 7 people all speaking at once and all getting fainter every second. And they were saying things like, "Look, it's fading, it's melting away, it's vanishing." Next moment, he was wide awake, still tied to the tree, colder and stiffer than ever. The wood was full of the pale, dreary light that comes before sunrise, and he was soaking wet with dew. It was nearly morning. That waking was about the worst moment he had ever had in his life. Hmm. Oh, well, that's the end of that. So, are we continuing this book next week on Wednesday at 8? Um, Yeah, that was a good couple of chapters. What quite the dream. Yeah, the dream world it's an interesting place to be. Very interesting. But yeah, I I thank you all for being here. And I have trivia on Monday night with Waters Above. It'll be on my channel. And yeah. Cliffhanger? Yeah, exactly. Just reading 2 chapters, I always feel like I'm leaving you with a cliffhanger, and uh, yeah, it's funny. Whenever I would like watch a show, I preferred to watch it when like multiple seasons were out, because then you can binge it and you don't have to be stuck on on a cliffhanger. You can just keep finding out what's happening, but uh, I don't really watch TV anymore. So I'll give you guys some shout outs, and then I'm gonna get out of here. So, Jenny T. Murphy, Barbara Zena Bear, Kirk, Melanie Moran, Gigi Abby Lynn, Eric DeLeon, Fefe the Penguin, Under the Zone Symphony. Awesome. Yeah, I thank you all so much for being here, and I will see you on the flat side next week. Much love. Bye.